A U.S. submarine mysteriously disappears beneath the icy Arctic waters. A new commander is sent to uncover what really happened. But what begins as a rescue mission turns into a race against time when he discovers a secret coup in Russia, a plan that could ignite a global war. To stop it, he must dive deeper into enemy territory, trust the very people he was trained to fight, and risk his ship, his men, and his life to prevent the end of the world. Deep beneath the icy waters of the Barents Sea, a Russian submarine launched a torpedo toward the USS Tampa Bay, a Los Angeles-class submarine carrying over 100 crew members. In an instant, the American vessel was destroyed, disappearing into the depths without a trace. At the Pentagon's National Military Command Center, the sudden loss of communication sent shockwaves through the Department of Defense. The Tampa Bay had vanished while tracking Russian activity near their coast. John Fisk brought the report to Charles Donegan, insisting they investigate immediately. He recommended a man known for his unorthodox methods but proven skill, newly promoted Commander Joe Glass. Far away, deep in the Scottish Highlands, Joe Glass was hunting when a military helicopter descended from above, delivering orders that would change his path. A Navy officer handed him documents confirming his promotion as captain of the USS Arkansas, a Virginia-class submarine. Without hesitation, Joe Glass reported to Faslane Naval Base in Scotland. As he inspected his new vessel, the crew prepared for deployment. Entering the control chamber, he introduced himself as their new captain, reminding them that discipline, precision, and trust would define their survival. His executive officer, Brian Edwards, took command of the crew as they set out to sea. Meanwhile, senior intelligence analyst Jane Norquist studied the satellite feeds surrounding the Barents Sea incident. With the upcoming meeting between Russian Defense Minister Durov and President Zakharin, she grew suspicious of the timing. Convinced something larger was unfolding, she urged Fisk to authorize a covert SEAL reconnaissance mission inside Russian territory. At a military training ground, Lieutenant Bill Beeman and his elite SEAL team were already running exercises. Their sniper, Martinelli, lagged behind during a timed drill and received a stern warning to sharpen his precision. Moments later, they received new orders and immediate insertion into Russia to observe enemy movements near the naval base at Polyarny. Back aboard the USS Arkansas, Chief Wallach entered Glass's office to inform him the submarine was ready for deployment. As a naval tradition, Wallach offered the captain a coin for luck, but Glass declined, showing his own, a token from his first command, one that had never failed him. With all systems checked, the Arkansas descended into the dark waters below. In Russia, President Zakharin arrived at the Polyarny naval base, greeted by military officials and his defense minister Durov. Unbeknownst to him, hidden tensions were already simmering within his ranks. Beneath the sea, the USS Arkansas approached within 40 miles of the Russian coastline. Under Joe Glass's command, they deployed scanning drones to map the ocean floor. The sonar revealed the wreckage of a submarine resting silently on the seabed. Bodies floated inside the shattered hull. Upon closer inspection, they noticed a massive hole, evidence of a torpedo strike. Suddenly, sonar detected movement above them. A Russian submarine was hiding below the ice above them. Inside the Russian vessel, its captain gave the order to fire. A torpedo streaked through the water toward the Americans. Joe Glass commanded immediate evasive maneuvers, deploying countermeasures to dodge the incoming strike. The Arkansas retaliated with its own torpedo, but the ice around the submarine makes it undetectable by their sonar. Joe Glass ordered the submarine to descend to a depth of 40 degrees, made some slight adjustments, and give the signal to fire. Their torpedo struck the Russian vessel directly, shattering its hull and ending the threat. But the danger wasn't over. A Russian torpedo was still locked onto them, slicing through the water in relentless pursuit. Guided by the sonar team, Glass steered the submarine through the wreckage of an older sunken vessel. The incoming torpedo struck the wreck instead, detonating with a thunderous explosion that rocked the entire area. The shockwave slammed against the Arkansas, causing a violent tremor that rattled the crew, but the ship held firm. The crew checked their systems. No one was hurt. They were still alive. Meanwhile, in the Russian command center at Polyarny, news broke that an American submarine had destroyed one of their own. Defense Minister Durov urged President Zakharin to respond immediately, calling for a retaliatory strike to defend Russia's sovereignty. But Zakharin refused, insisting on establishing contact with the American president to prevent escalation. Far from the conflict at sea, the elite Navy SEAL team deployed over the Arctic region. They jumped from a military aircraft into the frozen winds. Martinelli struggled with his equipment, but his teammate assisted him mid-air. The team landed, regrouped, and advanced toward the Russian naval base, weapons ready, their mission clear to observe and report. Back beneath the water, the Arkansas's sonar scan detected another Russian submarine nearby. The readings revealed catastrophic damage to its forward hull, evidence that the explosion had come from within. Then faint metallic sounds echoed through the sonar. There were survivors trapped inside. Joe Glass immediately ordered a rescue mission, but his executive officer, Brian Edwards, objected. The crew agreed with the XO, arguing that rescuing enemy soldiers was reckless, without orders from command. But Glass stood firm. He reminded them that leadership required courage and compassion, even in war. His word was final. The crew obeyed. They launched the deep submergence rescue vehicle into the depths, connecting with the damaged Russian vessel and pulling the survivors to safety. Once aboard, Glass introduced himself to the Russian captain, but the man responded only in his native tongue. Glass ordered that the survivors be treated for injuries and that the Russian captain be isolated in a separate compartment. They were now prisoners, but alive. On land, the SEAL team set up hidden surveillance cameras near the Russian naval base. From a nearby vantage tower, they surveyed the facility, carefully monitoring all movement. Inside Polyarny's control center, President Zakharin attempted to contact Washington, but his calls failed. When he stepped outside, he saw the naval destroyers mobilizing. He demanded an explanation. Defense Minister Durov entered with armed guards, coldly informing the president that he had assumed command. He had severed all external communications, claiming it was necessary to protect Russia from an imminent American attack. Zakharin warned him he was overstepping his authority and that Parliament would hear of this. But Durov revealed that he had already declared the president incapacitated and placed him under his own supervision. When Zakharin tried to leave, one of Durov's men raised his weapon. Oleg, one of the president's loyal guards, intervened and was shot. Durov then announced that all military orders would now appear to come from Zakharin himself, creating the illusion of legitimacy. Before the world could react, war would already have begun and he would claim victory. Durov's men executed the president's remaining guards, dumping their bodies into the sea, then seized President Zakharin and took him into custody. In the Pentagon, the U.S. command watched the live feed transmitted by the SEAL team. The horrifying truth unfolded before them. A coup had just taken place inside Russia. At an emergency meeting, the American president, Eileen Dover, gathered her defense council. Charles Donegan urged immediate military action, preparing for war. But John Fisk argued otherwise. He proposed a rescue operation to extract President Zakharin before the situation escalated. With a SEAL team already inside Polyarny and a U.S. submarine stationed nearby, Fisk insisted that saving the Russian president could be the only way to stop a global conflict before it began. President Eileen Dover addressed the situation with calm determination. After hearing all arguments, she agreed that John Fisk's proposal offered the best chance of preventing catastrophe. The mission was authorized. The U.S. submarine Arkansas and its captain, Joe Glass, were to proceed toward the Polyarny naval base to rescue President Zakharin. With Russian destroyers patrolling the area and sonar systems sweeping the sea, any misstep would expose their presence. Knowing he needed help from someone who understood the terrain, Glass approached Captain Andropov. He revealed that Durov had overthrown President Zakharin and that the United States had been ordered to extract him alive. To prove his claim, Glass showed Andropov the evidence that the Konik submarine had been sabotaged from within, not attacked by the Americans. Seeing the truth, Andropov agreed to assist him. Meanwhile, Durov's forces detected faint signals near the base. Suspicious of enemy presence, he dispatched troops to investigate. The SEAL team remained hidden. The soldiers swept the area, scanning for movement. As the team lay still, the group leader fired gunshots upwards. Martinelli was hit in the leg but refused to make a sound, enduring the pain silently until the patrol moved on. Once the coast was clear, Devon treated his wound, tightening a bandage around his leg. Lieutenant Bill Beeman informed the group that their mission parameters had changed. They were now ordered to rescue the Russian president himself. A U.S. submarine would extract them once the operation was complete. Inside the Arkansas, Joe Glass gathered his crew in the control room to brief them on their new orders. Moments later, Captain Andropov entered. Glass welcomed him aboard, but tension quickly filled the room. Brian objected, stating that the Russian officer had no clearance to see classified systems and should remain confined until they surfaced. But Glass overruled him, explaining that their route would take them through uncharted Russian waters territory no American vessel had ever entered. They had saved Andropov's life, and now he might be the only one who could save theirs. Andropov studied the system map and pointed to a narrow passage through the underwater terrain. He instructed them to stay close to the rock walls and avoid scraping against the seabed. They soon approached an area lined with sound detectors. Everyone aboard held their breath, maintaining absolute silence. A small screw rattled loose from one of the consoles. A crew member caught it with a wrench, but the wrench slipped, and another sailor reached out and grabbed it mid-air just before it struck the floor. Andropov then directed them toward a hidden passage in the underwater ridge. The sonar operator initially reported no opening, prompting the XO to argue again. Joe Glass silenced him, demanding discipline. Moments later, the sonar pinged the entrance had been found. The submarine slipped through the concealed route, completely undetected. On land, the SEAL team infiltrated the base perimeter. They discovered Oleg, the wounded bodyguard who had survived the earlier shooting. Together, the team advanced through the rear entrance, eliminating the guards posted outside. With a small explosive charge, they breached the door and stormed inside. The explosion alerted Durov and his men. A firefight erupted in the corridors as the SEALs tried to extract the president. In the chaos, Oleg stayed behind to hold them off, providing cover as the president and the remaining team members rappelled down the side of the building. Enemy gunfire struck Oleg. When the enemies moved closer, he triggered an explosive. With Oleg dead, Bill and Devin dropped to the floor under heavy gunfire. With no time to mourn, they leapt into the icy water below, bullets tearing through the surface as they swam. From the submarine Arkansas, Joe Glass detected their signal and immediately dispatched the deep submergence rescue vehicle to retrieve the survivors. Meanwhile, Durov's men pursued them relentlessly. When it seemed they would all be overrun, distant gunfire echoed from the hills. Martinelli, still alive, opened fire from his hidden position. His cover fire scattered Durov's soldiers long enough for the rescue team to make their escape. As Durov's forces continued firing, the SEALs waited desperately for the rescue pod to surface. Bill Beeman helped President Zakharin into the water, and together they swam toward it. John covered them, but was struck by a burst of gunfire and killed before reaching the pod. Bullets riddled the rescue craft, causing leaks to spray from its hull, but Bill managed to pull the president inside. Despite the damage, he went back for Martinelli, refusing to leave him behind. Durov received word that President Zakharin had been rescued and was still alive. He ordered the fjord to be sealed and commanded the fleet to hunt down and destroy the American submarine. Deep below the surface, sonar detected an approaching vessel. Captain Andropov identified it as a Russian destroyer, now under the command of Captain Sutrev. He told the Glass that he had thought this crew. The destroyer launched its first wave of missiles, and the shock waves rocked the submarine. The missiles missed direct impact but caused severe structural damage, breaching the outer hull. Moments later, torpedoes were launched into the water. After confirming the seabed was muddy, Joe Glass ordered the crew to dive deep, pushing the submarine down to the muddy seabed to reduce sonar visibility. The torpedoes closed in, one striking near the hull. At the Pentagon, the Department of Defense picked up the explosion. In the command room, Charles Donegan turned to John Fisk, demanding answers. He raged that, as far as the world would know, the United States had kidnapped and killed the Russian president. Above the surface, the US and Russian fleets moved into battle formation. The world stood seconds away from full-scale war. On land, Martinelli was limping through the forest. Durov's men surrounded him, closing in for the kill. Just as he prepared to make his last stand, Bill Beeman emerged from the trees, eliminating the attackers and pulling Martinelli to safety. Meanwhile, water flooded compartments as the submarine sustained heavy damage. Joe Glass met with President Zakharin, who assured him that if he could speak directly to his generals, he could stop Durov and end the conflict. Glass warned him that once they opened the communication system, he might not survive the pressure change long enough to tell the story. The Russian destroyer detected the submarine's movement and locked onto its position. The tension aboard the Arkansas grew thick as everyone waited for Joe Glass's command. He turned to Captain Andropov and told him to try contacting the destroyer's crew. If they were truly his men, if they still held any loyalty, they might listen. Captain Andropov picked up the communicator and addressed the destroyer directly. He revealed that he and President Zakharin were aboard the American submarine and demanded they hold their fire. There was silence for a moment. Then, slowly, the Russian destroyer ceased its targeting systems. The Arkansas rose to the surface, breaking through the waves. Norquist and John Fisk reported to Charles that the submarine had surfaced. Captain Sutrev ordered his crew to launch missiles on the submarine, but they refused to move. He pointed a gun at his assistant captain, yet he also stood still. The president's voice came through the speakers, ordering that no one should fire at the U.S. Captain Sutrev contacted Durov, informing him that neither he nor his crew would attack. Durov declared that he would handle it himself. Charles instructed John Fisk to tell Joe Glass to fire first, but Norquist objected, warning that it would provoke a response. Charles insisted it made no difference, since the outcome would be the same if they were fired upon and the submarine went down with the president on board. Joe Glass received the order to fire from John Fisk. He noted that the entire world would witness what was about to happen. Joe Glass instructed the battle stations to prepare for launch. A crew member informed Captain Sutrev that the U.S. submarine had opened its missile tubes. The crew was ready to fire, but Joe Glass did not give the final command. Durov gave the order to launch, and his missiles were fired. Joe Glass still withheld permission for a counterattack. Everyone on board prepared for impact. Just as the missiles closed in, the Russian warship intercepted the incoming missile and in a moment returned fire, destroying the Polyarny command center and killing Durov and his men. With the conflict prevented, Joe Glass docked the Arkansas at the Russian naval base to return President Zakharin, Captain Andropov, and the surviving Russian crew. Joe Glass and Captain Andropov exchanged farewells and mutual respect. Beeman returned with the injured Martinelli, and the Arkansas departed Polyarny, escorted by the Russian Navy. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.